watching the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. We'll go straight to the analysis segment of the news. And joining us now to make sense of these stories and more in the studio with us is Mr. Dele Fanimo, a seasoned reporter right here in Nigeria, and on this white table, a political and public affairs analyst. Mr. Fanimo, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I'm sure this season will finish one day.
Oh, well.
This is me.
Well, you are a seasoned reporter. We cannot take that away at all. Let's jump right into the conversation. Russia and Togo seem to be getting it right on the path of strengthening bilateral relations. Again, some have said that Russia, on its part, is also trying to strengthen her hold, particularly on having some African nations on their side for security purposes. From your perspective, what do you make of these kind of relations, particularly Russia and Tunisia? I beg your pardon, Togo.
See, this is another round of scramble for Africa. History is about repeating itself.
How do you mean on this?
This was the time. This was like the time when the colonial masters came with their different religions to colonize us. When they were coming, they brought the Bible to some part of Africa, and later on they brought Quran to some part of Africa. And what they did for us, to us, was to first damage our psyche, believing that we are savages. And the only way to tone us down, rather than going to war and losing their bullets and guns and their men, is to soften our hearts for them to exploit us. And they came in that guise, sold Bible to us, made our culture and tradition inferior to them, and took away those metaphysics and those other positive engagement that would have transformed us to world leaders today. And finally, they took our men, able-bodied men, to their plantation in the West Indies, in America, and Britain. And today, those in commanding heights of medicine and all the rest are there. 3 generations, 4 generations. And because of the plundering of our resources, they still went about instigating us against each other, getting our willing collaborators to further decimate our economy, our military might, and all that. And today, here we are, across Africa, no respite, nothing. Now, they feel that they cannot hold that forth in slavery capture again.
Okay.
Now they are enticing us with pseudo-security, and we are taking flights to their country.
You just practically smashed up what they brought as, I want to use the word, contracts to Africa. You just call this pseudo-security.
Pseudo-security.
Some think, again, that at this point, Russia seems legit.
I'm coming to that. That's why I'm laying this premise.
Okay.
Now they brought pseudo-security to us.
Yes.
And made us believe that, don't worry, you don't need to build arms. You don't need to build armaments. Just the same way Clinton hoodwinked Ukraine into the stoppage of nuclear buildup. Now, Ukraine wants peace today. They have to give up their uranium and some other mineral resources that forms the component of nuclear weapon and biological weapon. Now they are weak. That's why they cannot contend. Now, America suddenly woke up through Trump because it's a mercantile trader and businessman. He now saw that, look, Africa is almost falling in the hands of China. And Nostradamus' prediction shouldn't happen. And so, he felt he needed a pushback. Now, they are angling for the soul. The East Asia, the Eastern Europe, as represented by Russia. America, now they are coming back again to sophisticatedly enslave us, but giving us the impression that they are offering help. How do you embrace a thief who says he's coming to help you secure your property? Who will take away the property at the end of the day? Is it not the same thief? And that is what is playing out. What is the relationship between Togo and Russia up till now?
Now that again is a major conversation that has been panning across Africa because yes, Moscow chases about $40 billion Africa trade. Questions to be asked: which of the sectors in Togo can really fetch that figure for Russia, even if it's in the barest minimum?
You see, you're looking at the price of some of this commodity.
I'm even looking at the trade targets from.
No, I'm telling you, some of these things are embedded in our soil, and they buy it cheap. Just like Côte d'Ivoire, they are the largest producer of cocoa today. They export cocoa beans, but that a fraction of that cocoa bean, when it's coming back as chocolate, they determine the price of chocolate back to Africa.
Right.
They also determine the price they are going to buy your cocoa from you, because they say it is at raw state. So they are the one to put it to better use by adding value to it. Now, Russia is coming. America is coming. China is already in Africa. DRC, who are the people behind those exploitations of mineral resources in DRC? Are they not the same Chinese? Now, the commanding height of business, except for the likes of Dangote that are big industrialists, show me one particular area of investment in Nigeria today that is not either directly or indirectly owned by the Chinese. And that's why America is also looking towards a potential great nation that remains latent and not in the optics.
Now, again, this conversation between Togo and Russia is quite extensive because they are also in the front burner of conversation is the creation of embassies in Togo. And some quarters in government have said, look, this might just bring in the FDIs needed for the country. But do you think that is any way possible? Or you think this is another political theater like some African nations have experienced over time?
I'm telling you, in the months ahead, other nations will perch in Togo. And there will be that scrabble for the soul of Togo.
When you say other nations, what other nations are we looking at?
We are looking at, if China is not already there, America is also going to look at it. It is going to dot Africa in the next 2 to 5 years.
But Mr. Fanimo, concerns are being raised about the fact that these are contracts that are supposed to be signed by individuals who are saying, of course, call them leaders in Africa. They are not coerced to signing these contracts. They sign these contracts dotted lines with their sane mind. So if you are saying that there is a possibility of an underlined difference and, of course, disparity in this contract, then shouldn't we be holding our African leaders accountable for signing these kind of contracts across Africa?
Let me give you an example. At some point, I think shortly when this Fourth Republic came, we had the best brains in the labor movement.
Okay.
They went to China. You see, there is something that you should understand. Greed and wisdom don't cohabit. The moment you allow the passage of greed, wisdom takes flight. It's just like darkness and light. Did you know that to buy Yutong buses for labor mass transit, NSC went to China, to Yutong, and they gave them papers because of the hospitality and promises. They didn't take along a Nigerian interpreter of Mandarin, and they signed that contract. Till today, no single bus has come to NLC, and we have committed money. And arising from that, when NLC went there, they learned through when TUC went there, they learned through NLC's mistake, and they were able to bring their own buses back to Nigeria. Some of them are still plying the road. You see, African leaders is like there is a curse placed on them that once they see immediate gain, that delayed gratification that will come in form of building their country takes flight. How many Thomas Nyerere do we have in this continent today?
Well, again, we've come back to this path of not having strong individuals as against strong institutions. Again, I want to find out from you, Mr. Fanimo, how much of geopolitical posture are we seeing in Africa with the US government, the Russian government, and of course the French government consistently trying to have their hold across states in Africa? How much of these would African leaders continue to allow as against the development that you're trying to mention here?
You see, I was in a debate with some people in the evening yesterday.
Okay.
And I said, no matter how you want to locate our problem in Africa, it will still come back to bad leadership. And what brings about bad leadership? Greed, avarice, winner takes all. And myopic disposition to what should be done. If you are bent on chasing metal and gold is kept on top of a tree, you will never raise up your eyes to see that gold on top of that tree. That is what is assailing us in Africa. Now, the contest is, how much do you have in foreign banks? That's what the African leaders boast of. I recall there was a time a governor of Oyo State in a gathering was asked, a former governor. No, he asked them, in the course of their discussion, he asked them, now, how much do you think I'm worth now? Somebody who came into government that it was not worth 200 million. Then somebody said, Oga, by now, give or take, you should be worth about 15 billion naira. You know how he retorted? He said, what kind of insult is that? What is 50 billion? Now, you must be talking about 250 to 300 billion. And do you know what happened? When his successor came, the first inkling to that 250 to 300 billion in 8 years of staying in the saddle was that the first month when they brought allocation and IGR, you know what the officials, civil servants did? They took 1 billion naira raw cash to the government house to present to him. And the first question is, where is this coming from? Who is the owner? They say, okay, your predecessor had been collecting it every month. Now, that was the 96 billion that was raised against this predecessor, even without going into the books. Because for 8 years is 96 months. And that's 96 months times 1 billion, that's 96 billion.
Taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money. And at that time, when this man was in the saddle for 8 years, salaries were being owed, civil servants were dying, pensioners were dying.
It's quite
now, so you can see the greed. Now, do you know what happened? This is a man that said, if he dare steals people's money, that let God not allow him to enjoy that loot till he died. Do you know what? As soon as he left government, there was crisis. And at the end of the day, the incumbent governor summoned him and said, Egmo, this money, you have to refund it. And then he started running up from pillar to post. Did you know that the G-Wagon, it was said to have bought 2 preparatory to becoming a party helmsman. He never sat on one of it till he passed on. Those monies that were traced to him, I doubt if he ever spent 5% of it.
Now that's
but unfortunately,
yes.
The unfortunate thing about all of this is politicians never learn from history.
I like this last line that you just mentioned now, that they never learned from history, which again, questions would be raised by citizens that how much more should the people bear before taking to the streets? I move this particular conversation to the situation in Tunisia as we speak. There is an ongoing industrial action by young doctors of Tunisia. And again, the conversation have been on very low quality hospital equipment, low drug shortage, equipment gaps, and all of that. Yet the government is denying and saying this clearly is conspirators fabricating so much story to just undermine his government. How much more should the people take, particularly individuals who work for government to this level? I mean, how much more should they take before hitting the streets in protest?
You see, it's unfortunate. You know, Arab Spring started from Tunisia.
Right.
Just an individual, Bouazizi, who felt enough was enough, doused himself in gasoline,
right,
and ignited it. And Arab Spring is what we are still contending with today in Africa.
Should this be the situation that President Kais Saied of Tunisia is referring to by saying that these are conspirators trying to undermine his government?
You see, the point is, I don't always like to toe the line of playing victim. Because why don't you address what will make people corner you? If I notice that somebody might rope me to stealing, when I'm leaving this studio and I know there's an enemy out there waiting for me to be dubbed a thief after leaving the studio, the first thing I'll do is I'll turn out my pockets, raise up my hand, and walk past everybody so that you won't have any reason. But if I had come in and my slim pocket started bulging as I'm exiting, the optics are there. How can you say because conspirators are planning against you and you are not equipping the hospitals? That's a recipe for mass death. Those doctors are not going to use their bare hands to do cesarean operations. They are not going to use their bare hands to perform surgery. Granted that they can prescribe drugs. And when you prescribe drugs that are not readily available, and you don't want Tunisians to complain.
Mr. Fanmo, what is the implication of having to down-tool and this level of essential workers clearly down-tooling to this level? You also recall the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors are also down-tooling as we speak. What's the major implication of these kind of actions?
The major implication is because it doesn't go round. People tend to just ignore it. But who feels it knows it. There was this strike by medical doctors some years back. A man took his wife in labor to government hospital. She was rejected. And the nearest private hospital to that interland was about 25 kilometers. Video clips were shown to people that the woman was begging the husband, please don't let me die. I am at the threshold of dying. The husband was assuring her while the car was racing to the nearest hospital. Unfortunately, that woman's corpse was returned back home with a pregnancy. Now, how do you quantify that loss? And there are many like that these strikes would engender. How do you place those losses?
Mr. Fando,
that cannot be retrieved.
If the body language of a government clearly is on spending, and the people, and of course workers who are doing their best to keep the economy going, and of course keep the lives of citizens in check, are not properly paid, what should the parliament do in this mix?
Unfortunately, you see, the funny thing is, it's like anytime they go for their AU meeting, maybe they discuss how to make money and further impoverish their citizens. Because it runs through. Parliament is an extension of the executive arm in most African countries. In fact, some are not even in existence. They are just there on paper.
Rubber stamping every policy.
Rubber stamping everything. So how do you turn to a parliament that is a lapdog of the executive arm of government?
Should we have a space to have this conversation on a broader view? What would you suggest be a strict punishment or policy, as it were, to curbing these kind of actions of industrial downtooling in Africa?
Is it on the part of those who are downing tools or on the part of the government?
On the part of government.
Fine. Unfortunately, before you raise any issue around them, they say, what is your business?
Because there's also the part of medical tourism as well.
We are Tunisians, you are Kenyan, you are Nigerian. And there's a limit to what you can do to interfere in their private affairs, internal affairs of another country, because of the sovereignty of that country. So where do you go from there?
Should more policies and stricter policies be implemented on the part?
Is it at continental level or at sub-regional level?
Let's even start on continental level, because again, I say it always. Why should we not have stronger institutions like the AU, clearly saying we're not going to recognize any nation or any government that does not give priority to the life of their citizens? Does the AU have every, I don't want to call it a strength to deciding on what to do to these nations and the leaders?
You see, whatever pronouncement made by AU is not enforceable.
Why do you say so?
If you say you are ostracizing a nation, does that stop that leadership in that nation to have a rethink?
It stops some level of economy with some other nations around it. Don't you think so?
These leaders are ready to steal their country blind, even if foreign direct investment or grant is not coming.
Oh well, unfortunately, I would want to ask more questions, but I just uncovered that we've run past time for the analysis segment. Well, we've been talking with Mr. Dele Fanimo, a seasoned reporter right here in Nigeria, and of course, a public and political affairs analyst on the analysis segment of the African News. Once again, I want to say thank you so very much, Mr. Fanimo.
It's always my pleasure.
We'll take a very short break right now. When we return, more stories on African News will be up next. Please do stay with us.